suffering is inevitable. Everything that exists has an equal or opposite reaction, right? So you can't have the good without bad, or else it wouldn't be good. It would just be nothing. You know, you don't have anything to compare it to. And I think that if everyone wants to be happy, 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 you have to understand that you're going to be sad, sad, sad. And you take both days just as equally and realize that this too shall pass.
Yeah, pain and suffering is definitely a learning experience. It's a growth. It always amounts to growth. Whether I like it or not, I don't like it, but you know, it teaches me things. And if I'm experiencing pain and suffering, it's because I've got something to learn.
I don't believe suffering is a pathway to peace. I don't think suffering is a necessary or a contingent part of, to use a religious term, of salvation, of becoming better.
A lot of people who are in pain and mourning or at end-of-life experiences, that's when all of a sudden they turn to a rabbi and they say, okay, now what? Who am I? And their whole life they can do whatever they want, but as long as the life is status quo, there's no reason to turn to spirituality. And I think that spirituality in many ways got this stigma attached to it, that it's for people who are in pain and suffering. And I understand why, because it gives hope, it gives life, it gives experience, it gives meaning. It gives a meaning beyond what just is in my physical world. It's showing that there's something beyond this physical world.
When you see someone in a moment of pain or sorrow or hurt, and there's just a deep understanding, a heartfelt understanding of what they're going through, as if you were somehow not going through it, but have gone through it, and there's just a sort of support, and there's a recognition that we're all very similar in our growing, in our suffering, in our trying to go beyond our suffering into the experience of happiness and fulfillment. We can't heal ourselves. The complexity and the depth of our suffering is so great. We can't be the authors of our own healing. All we can do is allow ourselves to be healed by acknowledging more and more this greater presence around us and how it wants to move through us.
We've all had our own share of pain and suffering, but I choose to see and choose to look for the lessons. These last couple years have been probably the most challenging and probably even in a sense the most painful of my whole life. But yet, in the midst of that, I feel like my life has changed more. My belief system and even the way I believe and the way I perceive God even, I felt like I perceive God as so much more loving than I ever thought he was.
I didn't realize that it was a good thing, and only in my past 6 months of my life did I realize that in my life, in my pain and suffering, is where I grew the most. Rather than resist it, see it for what it is, be realistic about it, see the truth in it all, and move through it in a way that you can be grateful and gracious and loving still at the end of it all.
Disease that something is wrong here. Like I do feel that fairly often. All the more so when confronted with someone that firmly believes in God, actually.
That restlessness is part of who we are. Ongoing desire for more and more self-transcendence, that is relationship to the world, to others. As it's a process, we're never arrived. So we have always, I think, with us the tension of journeying.
There's a hunger in there that's, from my perspective, it's programmed in by a loving maker who puts a hunger impulse, a spiritual hunger, so that we search. If you find that nothing seems to actually yield real satisfaction and fulfillment, that's an indication that there's something about us a very real part of us that was built or created for life beyond this life.
I think that we are bombarded with images right now of what we should be, what we should think, who we should be, what we should look like. Most importantly, what we should look like. And I think that that creates the disease.
The same reason why we can't explain why we have to eat physically. Well, we also have a soul. The same way we have a body, we also have a soul. So spiritually, we need to eat. So I think that yearning and that drive that people have is their souls that are hungry. It's amazing. You starve yourself for a day. By the time the day's over, you're not hungry anymore. Beginning of the day, you're hungry, your stomach's growling. But by the time the day's over, you're not hungry. The moment you take a bite of food, you'll finish the whole bowl and the whole kitchen. The moment people get one little spiritual experience, they realize how hungry they are. And that's where the drive comes from.
We have so many assumptions. We live by assumptions about ourselves, with false beliefs about ourselves. And we define the world through these false beliefs. It's an incredible maze of confusion. You know, what the Buddhists and the yogis will call Maya, just a layer, a veil of illusion.
Can you hear him? Can you hear the angels calling?
Now let's talk about sex right now.
My father passed away almost 2 years ago, soon, maybe a year and a half ago. And when he passed away, I was there and I saw it happen. The amount of peace that I had within me, you know, the feeling that I had of closeness to this person, who's my father, on a whole different level, because he was gone. But the love was so strong, and I felt the love that he had for me so strong, you know, and I felt so close to something way bigger than I had ever experienced before.
And I was in Montreal, and it's like the bells rang, and it was like those bells were like they struck something in my soul, and I really had no clue about what my destiny would be. I didn't know, I had no intention of becoming a pastor, but something in the ringing of those bells made something inside me resonate. And I remember walking the streets in Montreal later that day and saying to myself, I don't understand this, but I know I'm home.
I find so many things, like right now, being present in this moment here, to me, that's a spiritual experience. It's not just the big moments, it's the small moments. I had my most spiritual moments through dancing and music. I'm a movement person, so through movement, I get a form of meditation and connectedness to a higher spirit or energy.
And I think that a lot of people have spiritual experiences, they just don't see them. People see things as coincidence, or they say, wow, how did that happen? How is that possible? Well, you know, that's spirituality. That's being able to be within this world, but be able to give into a higher power or rise above this world. So we're within this world, but above it. And so I'd have to say that every single moment of my life is a spiritual experience. It's just seeing it that way.
I had the most moving experience in Dr. Bali's yoga class. I realized that I was watching myself meditate, and that I that was watching myself is that watcher, that is that soul that never changes. That watcher that is watching my life happen is the same watcher that was there when I was 5 and started school. And it's the same watcher that was watching my wedding go on. It's the same watcher that, you know, watched myself go through a divorce. It's all the same, and it hasn't changed. My body has changed. My experiences have changed. But that watcher, that soul, they say never ages. And that's that part, I think, that night when I connected with that, and I drove home, and I haven't lost it since.
I've experienced many sort of very extraordinary things in the practicing of yoga or meditation, where the world as I knew it broke down and it was just experiencing nature at another layer of information.
I'm a cancer patient. I'm starting 12 years of cancer. When the cancer came, I was a very, very angry and very depressed person. Can't do anything. You take over. Because for many years I just kept it all. I'm going to take care of it. I'm going to handle it, you know. And lo and behold, he says, no, you're not. No. And I had to stay in faith for all these years. You know, I'm not saying that it was easy and that I've had my turmoils, but if it wasn't for the faith that I have, I never would have been able to, you know, to survive. I still wake up singing. So my spirit is usually 90% in good shape.
When I'm dancing and my mind is turned off and I'm just moving through the music and just going through a step, like I'm just like being. And it happens despite me. It happens when I'm fully engaged in the present moment.
Spirituality is keeping it simple and not making it complicated.
So, do you believe in God?
Yeah.
What's God to you?
Tinkerbell God.
What do you say to Tinkerbell?
Thank you.
Stripping away the layers and reveal your soul. You gotta give yourself up and then you become whole. You're a slave to yourself and them don't even know. Wanna have to live the fast life but your brain moves slow. If you're trying to stay high, you're bound to stay low. You want God but you couldn't inflate your ego. You're already there, then there's nowhere to go. Your cup's already full, then it's bound to overflow. If you're drowning in the waters and you can't stay afloat, ask Hashem for mercy.